You're watching the Daily Climate Show on Sky News. On today's programme, global temperatures tick up as scientists prepare the most comprehensive update on global climate research in 6 years. More flooding in England and around the world as scientists say we need better education on climate change impacts. And how one city in Canada is using parkland and trees to adapt to extreme weather events. Hello and welcome to the UK's only daily climate news show, where we track the changes happening to our world right now and meet those coming up with the solutions. And we start today with these numbers here on our data dashboard, because as global warming ticks up and the world experiences fire, floods and heat waves, scientists are meeting to finalise one of the most comprehensive and influential reports on climate change in years. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Assessment will update the science around greenhouse gas emissions and projections for future warming. And as the scientists meet, so too do ministers, with the president of COP26, Alok Sharma, holding discussions ahead of the UN summit being held in Glasgow in November. Our climate correspondent, Hannah Thomas-Peter, reports.
Extreme weather events unfolding around the world. A dramatic backdrop for ministers gathering at a UK-hosted meeting on climate change. Amid floods and storms, they are preparing for a crucial summit happening later in the year, known as COP26. The pressure is on to deliver and keep the worst effects of global warming at bay.
Ultimately, there is not going to be anywhere to hide at COP26. Each of us will be in the spotlight.
What actual progress has been made in the last few days to persuade countries like China and India and South Africa to do more to reduce their emissions sooner?
Until today, we were not clear whether there was this common understanding that out of the COP, there needs to be a package of decisions and actions. The homework is not yet done, but we are on our way.
There are still real sticking points. Rich countries have failed to deliver promised climate funding, and developing nations are getting fed up.
We've spent so much time getting ourselves ready. Now it's time for action.
Money is not the only problem that UK government negotiators are scrambling to solve. There are dozens of countries involved in the negotiations around COP26, and a lot of them want different things. There still isn't agreement, for example, on phasing out the use of new coal-fired power plants. Now, that might sound like a detail, but it's the kind of thing that could derail the summit if it isn't sorted out, and quickly. Just a few days ago, coal was the issue that stumped a meeting of G20 ministers. Climate experts say there's no more room for disagreements.
Time is not on our side. So that's why it's so important. This is the moment when we've committed to action. We can take action, and where delay is deeply dangerous.
Our vulnerability to climate change is becoming increasingly apparent. A lot is riding on COP26. Its success is far from certain. Hannah Thomas-Peter, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, joining me now for more on this is Professor Sir David King, former permanent special representative for climate change and founder of the Climate Crisis Advisory Group. Welcome to you. First of all, how important is this upcoming IPCC report, and what kind of impact do you think it could have?
Everybody turns to the IPCC report as the definitive document from the scientific community. I think it is therefore critically important. And I do believe that what we're going to see at this report is a much clearer message about the dire situation we're in. So I think it is important. But we've all got to remember that the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change is an international report. It has 195 nations that are contributors or nominally contributors, and it's a very painstaking process. I admire the way it's conducted. I admire those who work on it, but it is not the most agile body in the world.
And so the report itself, how significant a role do you think that will play in the run-up to COP26?
The climate crisis, month on month, gets more and more challenging. Frankly, we have run out of time, and we need to be on some kind of a, I don't like the phrase, but some kind of a war footing if we are going to make real progress. Are we anywhere near that? I think we might be in a better place than we have in the past for one simple reason. John Kerry, leading the negotiations on behalf of the United States of America, who I know well because I was doing the same for Britain in 2015, and Xie Zhenhua, leading the negotiations from China. These are the two biggest emitters in the world. China has done, in my view, much more on trying to switch across to non-fossil fuel energy usage over the last 10 years than the United States has. But nevertheless, both countries are committed to real action. And these two countries really can play a global leadership role in a way that we've not had before. Imagine Britain leading the way in the world on negotiations. Now, we did a good job. I don't think the Paris Agreement would have been reached without that. But nevertheless, we are not the big country that can lead the way. With these two doing it, it is possible. And of course, they're working closely with the European Union and with our own Alok Sharma here in Britain. So I think there is a better chance arising from this of progress. But my goodness, we've got a long way to go.
Professor Sir David King, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Let's take a look now at the day's other climate news. And UK housing is amongst the least energy efficient in Europe. But the National Residential Landlords Association has called government plans to make rented homes more efficient a pipe dream. It says more funding is needed if ministers want privately rented properties to have a minimum energy performance rating of C from 2025. The proposal could cut the country's collective energy bill by £5.1 billion each year through things like better insulation and double-glazed windows. Gardeners at Britain's oldest botanical garden are sowing the seeds for a warmer future. Fig and olive trees are being planted at the Oxford Botanics Domestic Garden, where the rock gardens have already been adapted to resemble an Eastern Mediterranean landscape. Rising temperatures mean the familiar English garden will become harder to maintain. And a cockatoo species could soon be listed as endangered, despite being considered a bird of least concern just a few years ago. The gang cockatoo is found in southeastern Australia, an area badly hit by the 2020 Australian bushfires, which reduced numbers by a fifth. The Threatened Species Scientific Committee says bushfires caused by climate change will continue to destroy the cockatoo's habitats and nesting sites. The Met Office is forecasting more thunderstorms in England and Scotland this week. Nearly a month's worth of rain fell in one day yesterday, flooding homes, roads and underground stations in London. The torrential rain followed record-breaking temperatures earlier in the week. Scientists predict that a key characteristic of climate change is a shift towards extreme weather. And recent events here, as well as floods in Europe, China and India, show how important it is to understand climate change so that we can deal with its impacts and adapt in the future. Well, let's bring in Professor Andrew Charlton-Perez, Head of Meteorology at the University of Reading. First of all, should we be surprised, do you think, by the flooding events we've seen in recent weeks in China and Europe and yesterday in London? Were the warning signs there?
There haven't been any attribution studies for these particular events yet, but we know physically that we would expect there to be more moisture in the atmosphere and for there to be perhaps more of these extreme events. In fact, the latest climate projections from the Met Office do show an increase in these kind of extreme thunderstorms. And so there's certainly something I think we will need to prepare for in the future.
Well, yes, and you're part of the Climate Education Summit, which is trying to address how climate change is taught. So how important do you think education is in understanding climate change and learning to adapt to it in the future?
Well, we think it's vital. We're really excited to partner with a number of other organisations that see the need for young people to understand the drivers of the changing climate and understand how to adapt to exactly these kinds of extreme weather events. And we'd very much like lots of people to join us at our summit. It will be entirely online on September the 15th. So if you search for Climate Education Summit, University of Reading, you'll find us, and please do come along and share your view with us.
Well, yes, and what might people learn if floods are to become more severe and more frequent? What can we do to adapt?
So there are lots of ways, of course, we can prepare ourselves, and our governments can prepare the urban drainage systems and prepare our local environments in cities to deal with larger amounts of water. And also we should prepare ourselves to take precautions and adjust to the risks, check on our neighbours, make sure we have a plan in case of extreme weather, and to be able to move our possessions and those kinds of things.
Andrew Charlton-Perris, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.
Now, although we've seen severe flooding in countries around the world in recent weeks, there are stories of hope too. Mississauga in Canada sits on the banks of Lake Ontario, and extreme weather events there are being made more intense and frequent due to climate change. So officials decided to try and mitigate the risks. Here's how the city is being transformed.
We have had floods, we've had ice storms, significant windstorms, which of course takes down trees. We've had extreme heat. We estimate the cost to be about $500 million to over the next decade alone. But one severe ice storm could range from 23 million to 38 million.
We have 62 stormwater management ponds in the city of Mississauga now, and what these ponds do is to help us control stormwater quality and water quantity.
We're on the shores of Lake Ontario, and we have a number of lakeside parks that absorb the water into the ground.
Over 40,000 trees, shrubs, wildflowers, and grasses are planted annually.
We are wanting to plant 1 million trees across the city so that, again, it absorbs the water. Measures like roof drainage control, permeable pavement, stormwater ponds.
Here what you're seeing is the energy dissipator, which is the outlet of the stormwater management pond.
I think the key message is just really applying a climate lens to decision making and leadership. I think that, we can't do this without strong leadership.
Well, that's everything from us for today. On tomorrow's show, building progress towards reducing emissions from concrete. Thanks for watching. See you then.